And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Brandon Beachum, author, philosopher, and truth seeker, host of the Positive Head podcast and late-night style talk show Optimistic. Brandon is a serial entrepreneur who, while living on a friend's couch, co-founded what is present-day Resort Share Company. Brandon, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Jeff. This is a pleasure.
Brandon, your book is called The Golden Key, Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance. What inspired you to write it?
Great question. You know, I have, like yourself, we are definitely, as we were talking about before, turning the microphone on, or the record button on anyway, that we're cut from similar cloths. And one of the ways I would say that's true is we both do a lot of podcasts. So I started the Positive Head podcast in 2015. Between myself and my co-host, we do 5 episodes a week. She does 2, I do 3. And we're, 2,000 episodes in. So are almost. So, I've been talking about, since my own sort of, let's say, spiritual awakening in the late 90s, I've talked to anyone who would listen. I mean, if you listen to episode 1 of Positive Head, it's like, this is so my poor friends and family's ears can stop bleeding from me talking about consciousness and the ultimate nature of reality and just finding a new outlet for it. And after, years of doing that, going on, 9 years or so now, wow, I can't believe it's been that long. At some point I thought I want to have something that really distills my perspectives on the ultimate nature of reality into something concise, because I tend to be very verbose. And, a podcast is great because it's very free form, freestyle. But if you actually take everything that I'm saying and write it out, there's a lot there. There's a lot of ums and buts. And, it's not the grammatically is pretty on paper, if you will. And so the idea was I want to just have something that's very concise. The Golden Key is, 100 pages or so, 3 hours if you listen to my audiobook. And it's 25 years of deep exploration of the ultimate nature of reality, distilled through the lens of the Brandon Beachum avatar, if you will. And, it's just something that I wanted to get out into the world at some point. And so that was the aim of the book. And I'm happy to say, I distilled it into, here's 8 keys I found, 25 years of deep exploration. You can get this insight in, 3 hours of listening or 100 pages of reading. And that was the aim and mission of the book.
You mentioned the ultimate nature of reality.
Mm-hmm.
What is your definition of it?
What a question. The ultimate nature of reality. I would say the foundational thing that I can distill that down to is that we are all fractals of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. The consciousness that animates my form is the consciousness that animates your form. The separation between us is illusory in nature. So we are, we are not beings that I always put on Facebook or wherever, if someone has a birthday come up, I'll say happy 3D incarnation anniversary, because you weren't created on that day, I don't believe. I believe you're born into this dimension with amnesia on purpose. And you're, literally, as you hear these words, we are floating in eternity. And you are an infinite being that has always been and always will be. And, that's the nature of the situation in which we find ourselves, I believe. And so everything I talk about on the podcast, in the book, in general, is navigating my life through that lens. Hold on. If there's only one of us, everywhere I go, I'm there waiting for myself, and there's only one of us in the room. Now what? How would I act in the highest, greatest, grandest, best way possible to create the most positive outcome, the step into the highest timeline potential, if you will? And that, I believe, is the ultimate nature of reality. And once you start putting that lens on, and just, I always say to people, especially if they're new to some of this information, look, I know it's a lot. Listen with an open mind. apply some of the perspectives and ideas, and ultimately results speak the loudest, right? So what sort of results does it get you if you apply some of these perspectives and start navigating your life through this lens?
So are you saying that when we return to the other side, are we all collectively one, or does our ego break down and we are just one?
Yes. So the way I view these sorts of questions, and it's a great question, is there's relative truths. You and I are separate. There is an argument to be made for that most would agree with. We're you're Jeff, I'm Brandon. I live in California, you live in Texas. On and on it goes. I'm seeing you over the internet right now and in another location. So we're separate. That's true. From another perspective, I would say the consciousness that animates my form is the consciousness that animates your form. The separation is illusory in nature, and therefore we're one. So a divine dichotomy, two apparently contradictory things that both hold true depending on the vantage point from which we are speaking. So there are relative truths. And I think that is very important to understand as we sort of play with a lot of these, concepts, because there are little human brains it can melt our brains to try and understand, infinity, for example. Like, how do you even wrap your mind around the concept, And so, yeah, I believe that it's relative truths, and at some level, there is no separation whatsoever. There is if you think of source, consciousness, the universe, higher self, God, whatever term you want to try and give the thing that's unnameable, it's viewing through many lenses, right? So there's a lens through which, if you follow my consciousness up the ladder, let's say, it's viewing, it is God, it is and then and a lot of people, I know you have people who have near-death experiences and things on the show, and I'm sure you've heard this and seen this a bunch. I was one with everything, and I knew everyone's heart and mind and every story and it was just me. There was nothing else. And then all of a sudden I was told to go back, and there was some level of separation, and I was shoved down into this tiny body that I could barely fit in, and it felt so constraining. And so, it's what we are is so incredible. It's able to do all of this, simultaneously. So, there's a version of me up the conscious ladder, if you will, that has seen and experienced all of it as one. And there is absolutely no separation between Jeff and Brandon, and it's the same being having the same experience. And then here we are with having the beautiful experience of separation as well, which makes it all, that contrast, I believe, is what gives it meaning. Because if it's all one and there's nothing else, then that's the same. 1 and 0 become the same in a sense, right? It becomes nothingness. So that's the dance I believe we're engaged in eternally.
I know it's probably impossible to do, but do you live your life when you interact with people, you're interacting with yourself?
That is my foundational aim in my interactions, And I always, I'll give talks sometimes, like at festivals. I think of, okay, I encourage you now to go out from this workshop and today really play with the idea and let it settle into your being that everywhere I go, I'm there waiting for myself. There's only one of us in the room, and operating from that. This is the core foundation of the situation in which I find myself. I'm not going to buy into the illusion of separation. So what is, and everything that's reflecting back to me is a close enough vibrational match that it's showing itself to me out of all the potentials of what I could be experiencing in this moment. The varied, we think of just media in general, the people hearing this, out of all the things vying for their precious attention, I would say it's because there's such a close vibrational match. They're attracting this version of themselves for some reason, whether it's a positive, uplifting, easy experience, or whether it's challenging, especially if it's challenging. Why is this happening for me? What is this showing me about myself? And if my aim is to always slip into that vantage point and perspective. And part of being human, I think, is 2 steps forward, 1 step back. We're riding, everything is vibrational in nature. And at some point we're really connected to that concept and idea, and it's present in our, in our reality. And then in our minds and hearts. And then, like Mike Tyson says, you may have that aim too, just, when you step into a situation or whatever that I'm going to be with the in-laws for, this holiday. Remember, Brandon, remember, Jeff. And then, like Mike Tyson says, everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face. It's like all of a sudden you get around, or Ram Dass said, if you think you're enlightened, spend a week with your family. And it's, it's easy for us, I think, to get, as we're getting our sea legs, if you will, as evolving beings, to get thrown off. And that's okay. It's part of the challenge, I think, is, when you are aware enough to know this stuff. And then for me, a big challenge, I'm pretty fiery. I've got a lot of energy flowing through me. And so I can get, fiery. I can get it's a double-edged sword. That same fire has served me well with starting businesses and podcasts and, make things happen. And that same energy, not contained and managed efficiently. Something's not going my way. Someone does me wrong, right? As if there were such a thing. And then it's like the fire hose comes out, just like energetically blasting, whoever, whatever, getting agitated, angry, upset. And so for me personally, that's been a big challenge, is not allowing agitation and that energy to go dark. And so, so I think, but it's a dance. And one of the things I think, once you become aware of this stuff, that's easy to do, then it's like, oh gosh, I fell off the wagon. I was awful. The way I handled that was like, oh my gosh, I can do so much better. I know better. Now you start beating yourself up for what you should, or you knew better, you should or shouldn't have done. And it's like, once you realize it's all divine, it's like, hey, you know what? If I slip off and I don't handle something in a way that is, my highest and best, I realize, like, oh, well, all that means, Brandon, is the universe is going to give you another chance to get it right. And so what motivates me most is, I don't want to repeat some of these things. And but beating yourself up is definitely a slippery slope we need to be very cautious of, because then what are you doing? You're just adding to, you're decreasing your vibration again. And you came here to learn and grow, and that is not always pretty.
It's interesting that you mentioned beating yourself up. So many of my guests talk about how we're too hard on ourselves.
Yep.
Even near-death experiencers talk about that.
Yep.
Why do you think we do this to ourselves?
It's interesting, because I always say we have such varied paths as souls. And the number one thing I believe we're all here to really lock in, get, understand, and master is self-love. And the reason that's present for each of us as part of our path, no matter how varied they may be, and why it's so foundational, is because you are a fractal of source, right? And what is source's experience? If you are a chip off the block, and it's your source playing itself out in a smaller context, let's say in a smaller playing field, smaller arena, what is source experiencing at its ultimate experience? It is alone. It is a journey of self-love. It is, if you're one, if it's all you, there are no others ultimately. And so this is a journey of self-love for source, for us. And if you are, and we find so often it's so much easier to give grace to others. And then when it comes to self, we're so hard on ourselves. And meanwhile, that self-deprecation, self-destructive kind of behavior isn't helpful. It's okay to acknowledge where you slipped and own it. I'm not saying don't own it, don't be aware. But then once you are aware and you've gotten the information you need about the situation, it's so important to be for something and against nothing. I'm not against how I behaved. If I'm against how I behaved all the time, what you resist persists. You're giving, it's literally, the Wright brothers didn't contemplate flying by, they didn't learn how to fly by contemplating the staying on the ground of things, right? Mother Teresa, when they came to her and said, we're going to do a 1 million person march against the war in Vietnam. We want you to be front and center. She said, I'll never do that, but have a march for peace and I'll be there, because she understood what you resist persists. So beating yourself up for something that's in the past, when really it's just a learning, right? It's like, you don't get stronger by, going to the gym. You get stronger by continuing to press the weights, and you maybe lifted some weights there and maybe your arms gave out, but next time you'll be stronger. And so, just really putting things in the proper context is vital, and understanding that, the self-love thing is everything. Everything's built on that foundation. And, the reality is there's no soul that is more worthy of love than you, because there is no other souls. It's all reflections of you. You are as valuable and worthy as any other soul ever has been, could be, or will be, simply based off the nature of what the heck's going on here. And so once you start really feeling that, tapping into that, it allows you to introduce grace more gracefully into your own journey.
Do you think there can be a slippery slope between self-love and then going to the opposite, like greed, narcissism,
Yeah.
self-absorption? Where do we find the balance?
Great question. I always say one of the biggest checkpoints, I think of our life kind of like the video game, right? And there's a lot of evidence to kind of support that. You and I talked a little bit about this before we began. Simulation theory. It's like this whole thing is made of light. There are certain rules that someone has programmed, and I think a lot in terms of the video game that many of us have played. You and I are close to the same age, so I think of going through Super Mario Brothers, the first version of it back in the day. It's like, oh, if I pass the test and beat the boss at the end of the level, I level up, I get new armor, I get new opportunities, new experiences. And I think our life plays out in that way as well. And this is an elaborate game in a sense. And one of the big stopping points, the bosses at the end of a level, I believe, is spiritual narcissism. Because once you start having your awakening, and this information starts really flooding in, and you're feeling it in your heart and mind and soul, and it's like, oh my gosh, I am the one, right? I'm just like Jesus, just like, I am it. And you start feeling the truth of that reality. And when you start understanding that source is infinite in its scope, so there are timelines where your avatar hearing this has done incredible things that are reflective of what the one could pull off, right? And I think some people fall in that spiritual narcissism trap, and then it creates, oh, and I'm better than you too. It's like, hold on. Yes, you're the one, but don't get your panties in a bunch. So is everyone else that you see, right? They're the one too, whether or not they're tapping into that realization at the same level you are or not. If they haven't, they will, and maybe not even in this life, but don't even get it twisted that you are somehow superior. You're not inferior either, right? You are it. And so I think that spiritual narcissism stop off point, checkpoint, if you will, boss, gets some people. I can think of some people, one person in particular in my life, it's just like, oh, or a few really. It's like, oh man, if you could just get past your ego and you're thinking that you're superior, you have so much to offer. And instead that ends up, it's like a snake eating its own tail kind of thing.
When talking about the simulation theory in your book, I think you're basically calling it the golden game, right?
Well, I talk about Nick Bostrom and the Oxford professor who put forth this idea of simulation theory in, like, I think 2001 or so, and that really where it started to take hold, and you have people like Elon Musk talking about it, and a lot of people considering this idea that we're in a simulation. And so the golden game is sort of at the end of the book where I challenge people to play a game with the universe and see if you can set intention, I think ritual is really important, and setting intent, where attention goes, energy flows. So if you have some structure, in this case, here's a structure of a game that you could play to manifest what form of abundance are you most wanting to call in, next. A lot of people think in terms of monetary abundance. And to me, it's important in our monetary based reality, but compared to health or fulfilling relationship, or it's way down the totem pole, I would say. So let's play an exercise to use your focus, if you will, and pattern and ritual to see if you can drum up more abundance in your life that you've set the intention to drum up. So that's really what the Golden Game is about. And because I gift the book to people too, it's like I tie it to, now if this book has been a value, you can look at the idea of, like, if you decide to pay something for it out of your own accord, you don't have to do anything. It's a pleasure and an honor to gift it to you. And if you decide to do something proactively, you don't have to sort of create more currency, more flow, energetic flow. Let's use that as now let's see if we can get that currency to flow back to us in terms of, like, I want a better relationship. I want whatever it is. And so it's just, the whole thing's gamified. And so it's, I wouldn't say it's directly tied to the idea of simulation theory, other than we're playing a game within a potential simulation.
Well, in your book, you write about the 8 keys to abundance. Can you, without giving us the whole book, can you briefly tell us about those?
Key 1, lie. Key 2, cheat. Key 3, steal. No, kidding. Everyone's like, what? Not quite. So once again, these are the keys that I've come up with based off of my 25 years of exploring these perspectives and ideas, and trial and error, and teaching best what I most need to learn, and being a slow learner sometimes. I'm happy to just rattle off the keys if you'd like.
Sure.
So the first key is see the oneness. The second key is know the illusion. The third key is focus your flow. The fourth key is align your intentions. The fifth key is be. The sixth key is trust the mystery. The seventh key is love what comes. The eighth key, or golden key, is master the universe, the YOU, universe. So master the universe.
Is one key more important than the rest?
I kind of use the golden key, the eighth key, as the one that ties the others together. Once you have seen the oneness, know the illusion, you're learning to focus your flow, you're aligning your intentions, you're learning to be, you're trusting the mystery, you're loving what comes, you now are stepping into mastery of your YOU, your own private. I believe we're all the lead actor, actress, star, director of our own private universe. And you are the star of the show. And I am a prop in your universe. You're the only one in it. And Source is perceiving through that avatar. And they're infinite reality. So there's, you're a prop in mine. It's like, of course I make it. Of course I do great things. I'm the only one here. And so it's really, I would say, yeah, that's the one that sort of ties them all together. Mastering your universe.
I love that, because I've asked that from a guest before. If it's possible that we're the only one here and everybody else is just like a non-player character.
In a sense, I think once again, we're back to these relative truths. What vantage point from which are we speaking? But from a certain vantage point, I'm literally Source, who's chosen this one character to perceive and experience through. And then I've built an entire reality. What is it? The Truman Show? Like, I built a whole reality around me to reflect me back to me. In every interaction, every story I hear, that's happening on the news, it's all a part of my being. And it's, it's inviting me to wake up to the truth of the reality. And this is how, source entertains herself and experiences and has it's this journey of self-love, but behind the smoke and mirrors of it all, it's one being, floating in eternity with itself.
Do you think that we have to be mindful of our thoughts? Because if not, we'll manifest bad things in our lives.
I believe, the Positive Head podcast started because I had a company at the time called the Resort Share, where I had a lot of employees, and using my thoughts to manifest more financial abundance. I called in the circumstances that led to me going from living on my friend's couch to an Inc. fastest growing private company that was doing, north of 10 million a year in revenue, what only 1 in 10,000 entrepreneurs ever achieves, that level of, volume, revenue, if you will. And so, I'm standing up, giving a talk in front of my employees one day, and I'm talking about, if I could just put something on your arm that would monitor every thought you had throughout the day, and put it and simplify it into 2 buckets, positive or negative. And then at the end of the day, you could show me how many positive thoughts and how many negative thoughts. I can give you an indicator of where your life's going. Right. And so that's when someone came up to me and he goes, oh, an employee I hardly had met came up and said, oh my gosh, this kind of exists. My psychiatrist had told me to do this simple technique of putting a rubber band on my wrist. And every time I would have a positive thought, a negative thought, just like pop myself, just to break myself out of the pattern. And I thought, oh, what an interesting idea. I'd never heard of this. So I went home and just started rummaging through my drawer and found an old racquetball, racket. Like it has a wrist holder, so you tie it around, so if you let go, it doesn't hit the guy next to you in the face. And it was a head racket, so it was this elastic that had been on a racket, and it said head on it. And I'm like, oh, this is perfect. It's poppy. It's like, I could snappy. I could wear it on my wrist and it says head. Perfect. This is to create a positive head. And that's how the podcast originally, then I actually created a product similar to this out of recycled, materials, and created the early day positive head bracelets. And then I was like, well, I need something more on this, website other than this product. What do I do? And then late night talks, and next thing you know, by morning, it's like, I'm going to start a podcast called Positive Head. And here we are. So,
do you think that we're the cause of our own suffering?
I don't believe there's ever been a victim in all of eternity. And that's a tough one. That's probably one of the most challenging perspectives that I and others will share, especially when someone's had something way more challenging than I've experienced. And it's very easy to say, oh yeah, look at you've been blessed with health and a good family, and your challenges compared to whatever some dramatic challenge is, minimal. And I understand that, and I respect that. And I don't, my belief is that we choose our parents, we choose our, everything that is happening has been, I believe it's a dance with our higher selves. So you have, you have Brandon, the conscious human being, who, based off of all my inputs and knowledge and information, I think that this is the best thing for me to do today. And so I'm setting an intention to do a certain thing. Then you have the higher self, it's like Russian nested dolls, the version of me that's more, in a sense. And I'm playing checkers, and my higher self is playing chess, and it's viewing from a vantage point and growth and evolutionary scale that's well beyond this one little lifetime and my desire to, go play tennis this afternoon. And so I think prior to coming into incarnation, I think there's things that we've also set up as, key moments that are tied to that particular character or avatar. So unbeknownst to me, there's a plan that at this point in time, I'm going to lose my job, lose my partner, lose whatever. So I think I'm choosing as much as I can with the information that I have. And then I think there's some choices that have been made by a part of me that are sort of beyond, my ability to affect. I think from this moment forward, there's many, many, many versions of Brandon. And I talk about this in the book, how my life plays out at the corner of all our lives play out at the corner of free will and destiny. It's destined because time is an illusion. It's all already happened. So free will comes in because source is infinite and it has so many varied possibilities from this moment forward of which version I actually see in my movie. Right. And so that's where the sort of choice comes in. It's all already happened, and you want to choose, well, okay, the greatest and grandest version of yourself, the most rewarding from this moment forward. No matter how grandiose, source has already been there, done that, and gotten the t-shirt because time is illusory. So Brandon has actually already lived that out. Our job, where our free will comes in, is we get to choose which version we step into by managing our vibration. We be it to see it, right? Most people are doing something like work in order to have something like money, in order to be something like happy, when really being something like happy will bring the things that you want to do and have that reflect that. So I think this is where the dance is for us, free will and destiny. We get so much wiggle room, if you will, to co-create our reality. And I don't think, now I could be wrong, but I doubt there's a version of the avatar Brandon Beachum from this moment forward, or Jeff, that goes on to play center for the Los Angeles Lakers next year, right? So there's certain confines within a particular avatar's potential trajectory based off of, the conditions of that character, right? And so yeah, I think we create our reality, and there's a part, it's back to this two apparently contradictory things that both hold true, this divine dichotomy. And there's a surrender element that's very important because, there's things at play that are beyond your ability to fully control.
Every now and then I'll be doing something like, for example, I would be walking on the edge of a cliff, and then I kind of imagine, wow, it would really suck if I slipped and fell off the cliff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wonder, is it possible in another timeline I actually did slip and fall off the cliff? You ever think about stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely, all the time. Yeah, and I would say absolutely it is. It's like, if you think of source being infinite in its resources and time, no time, right? There is no time, so it's infinite in all directions, time, resources, potentials. Source probably plays out a lot of things you haven't stepped into with this character.
If we get back to how you were on your friend's couch,
Mm-hmm.
from my research of you, that friend was actually your ex.
Yeah, that's correct.
How did that how did that play out?
I mean, I've always been pretty unconventional. And I have a child. And so it's the mother of my child at the time, had just remarried. And I was like, God bless you, Jim, I wish you the best, because she's a lot. And I just I had just kind of went through launching this social music sharing platform at the time called Industry. I had in 2008, 2009 timeframe. And excuse me. And I hit some hard challenges with it. Financial resources were really not in a great spot at that moment. I'd set the intention to manifest more. That was the beginning of Resort Share. She had a place where we already had a good relationship raising our child together, where they had extra room, and like, oh yeah, just come stay with us. And she was very unconventional as well, and him and I were great. We were friends. We ended up working together years later. And so yeah, it's like, oh, okay, I can save money staying here. It makes it easier with handing off our kid all the time. Our child at the time, who still, needed to be, now he's an adult. But so yeah, that's kind of what I did. And then that was the beginning of what is, what went on to be a big company. And so obviously I didn't just stay there very long.
Well, I mean, you achieved massive success. Where if you achieved what only 1 in 10,000 could do, what do you think your secret was?
Well, first off, the secret I would say is encoded in the question, because it's not it, 1 in 10,000 have done, but all 10,000 can do, right? So that's really the answers in the way you pose the question. You achieve what you said, what 1 in only 10,000 could do. They maybe they haven't done it, but they're all capable of it. And the real secret to it was, hey, I am in this moment. I launched this thing that I thought was really like my biggest project I was meant to bring to the planet. All these spiritual breadcrumbs, and if you ever want to hear that story, it's quite a trippy story. If you go to the website Industry, you can hear the podcast there where I tell the whole origin story of Industry, and that's spelled TRINDUSTR.EE. It's quite the story. And I thought, okay, this is what I'm meant to do. Some crazy spiritual breadcrumbs, synchronicities leading me to do this project, hitting walls, personal tragedy within my family, needing to put it on hold. And, but I still knew all these things that I am talking about, even though I hit a huge wall in my life. The question is, why is this happening for me? I know my worth is not tied to how successful I am financially or from a business perspective. At that moment, I was, in my early 30s and on my ex's couch. I mean, you by any traditional standards, you could say this guy's the loser. He's whatever, and that story just wasn't anywhere in my being. It was like, yeah, the greater the one toils for their freedom, the greater the sense of freedom is attained. The more challenge, the more upside. The higher the branches, the deeper the roots. Okay, I'm experiencing some deep roots right now, so it's only going to lead me. It's this or something better. Okay, that didn't go as planned. Next, because it isn't over if I haven't won. And so that's the story that I was just really, believed in every ounce of my being, which led to, the universe needing to respond energetically to the vibrational pool I was swimming in. And that led to, the success.
We all have a certain amount of fear in our lives, and I'm sure you even had some when you started this business.
Oh, yeah.
What is your advice to help people overcome that fear?
Great question. Fear can stand for two things in my mind. FEAR can be forget everything and run, or face everything and rise. And so fear is an opportunity for expansion. And at the end of the day, and I'm someone, I think part of our journey as beings is to really transmute a lot of things that come from our ancestral line. It's in your DNA. And, I look at my mother, a lot of fear around something happening to her children, or, or my father, we have the same birthday. I have a lot of crazy synchronicity around my birthday. Oh. And we have the same birthday, and his grandmother and great grand died on that day, and on and on. There's so much to that. That story's a trip. If you ever want to hear it, I'll share. But he has a lot of fear around God. Dad is going to punish you, like his father, is not the nicest guy. And so if you get it wrong, you're going to get hurt, And so there's a lot of fear in my own lineage. And I've seen that come up. A lot of times I've had people tell me, man, you're fearless with business. And I've had moments, even on plant medicines, I've done ayahuasca half a dozen times. Most of those were processing fears of something horrible happening, And so I realize, though, now as I've, dealt with my own fears, like I said, a lot of times for me, they've come up in the past using some sort of a plant medicine or, entheogen. And as over time, it's allowed me to work through it more and more and face those, and to realize, like, you know what, the only thing to fear is the fear of fear. We're scared of being scared. Well, what if I just, like one of the keys, I trust the mystery. Like, I am an untouchable fractal of source. I've always been, I always will be. Anything that comes to me, that's got shadow frequency, what if I just embrace it? What if I love it? What if I can bring the vibration of love and fearlessness to it. Wow, what have I accomplished? And it's interesting. I mentioned, we've talked about my child's mother, who, it's a very sad from one perspective and challenging story with her. At that time, when I was staying on her couch, she was just starting to go from being like, she's intense and a little crazy, like people we have all known and loved, like, okay, they're a little intense and wacky, to the cheese slipping fully off the cracker, in a sense of, if you were to see her now, it's really sad. You can't even, it's like a wild animal almost. It's like a possessed person. It's so dark and so, but I look at it, and I don't know if do you know who Shaman Durek is?
I don't.
He's pretty well known. He has a podcast, and he's engaged. Maybe they're married now. I think he's still engaged to the Princess of Norway. And so dad is the king in the whitest country on the planet, and he's a big black bisexual shaman. So they've gotten a lot of press in Europe, and so I had him on my podcast years ago, and he claims to be able to tap into anyone multidimensionally and really perceive beyond the veil. And he was talking about possession, and I was like, I didn't really believe in possession until I saw my child's mother. It's like a possessed person. And he's like, oh, let me tap in. And he's like, oh, yeah, she's possessed, and it's an entity that goes by Lavana. And he goes into all these details about Lavana, and when she was in the physical form, she was, beheaded people and was this tyrant. And does your kid's mother say this or say that or do that? I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And, at the end of it, I'm like, I'll never prove these things. I'm very open, but, there's how am I going to prove she's possessed by Lavana? She talks like a possessed person. She will even speak in like old English, kind of, really dark stuff. And I'm telling my son about it afterwards. I'm like, you should listen to this podcast with this guy Durek. And he says he talks about your mother and that she's possessed by an entity that is named Lavana. And he looked at me and he goes, Dad, that's what she just named my new sister. Yeah. So I bring that up because here in my own life, there's this, I see us as like yin and yang. I'm representing a lot of light on the planet. I've reached a lot of people with Positive Head and, the book, and through the Transformational Hub, co-living space event center I helped to steward with my partner in Los Angeles. And it's like, we're like, the higher the branches, the deeper the roots. And my son is very clear, very kind, very, to be determined what he does with his young adult life. But, I've had some pretty intense predictions around him being, this huge actor and all these things when he was young, and this huge star that reaches and touches millions and millions of lives. And I am always listening to those things with open mind. I'm not overly committed to, or, this is definitely how it is. I don't really do that. But, in the last couple of years, he's been in 30 productions. He just, got a film into the Cannes Film Festival. He was voted best actor in an indie film in the Los Angeles Film Awards a few months back. He's just like, he can barely handle all the auditions that he gets accepted for, And so it's like, okay, so if I'm representing all this light on the planet and I'm going to only touch more people, and he is the same, what is she holding down? It's like, the reason you and I can have this conversation is because Saturn or Jupiter or both, I forget which, is absorbing all the impact, all the things, debris that comes into our system. They suck in and absorb so that we don't get bombarded and basically, atomic bomb, meteor, asteroid attack all day, every day, right? We couldn't live without them. And I really view her, my more expanded perspective on it is, this soul is such a badass, such a powerful soul that loves me and her son so much. She said, I'll absorb the dark so that you can have, the high branches. You can be the light. And, I look at him and the choice he made. He chose like yin and yang to create him, in a sense. And it's like, you look at it through that lens, and then it becomes beautiful in a sense, right? And so I don't remember how you got me on this topic, but I somehow landed here, and hopefully it's a story worth sharing.
What about people who find themselves stuck in life often? What is your recommendation for them?
Well, if someone is feeling stuck, one of the biggest things that will keep you stuck is resistance to being stuck. That which you resist persists. That which you accept, you move through. So you've probably tried a lot of things if you're feeling stuck. Have you tried accepting being stuck? Have you tried loving being stuck? Have you considered that maybe you're being prevented from something that wouldn't serve you the way you think it would? I'm feeling stuck. I want this new job or whatever. When I firmly believe when you've learned whatever you're meant to learn from an experience, natural separation occurs. I had an experience with this, as I mentioned, I run a co-living space in the Los Angeles area, and it's, 10 people at any given time and events and a lot of energy, a lot. And I had someone show up one time with my birthday, which is a big trigger in my, my ears perk up like, oh, here we go. This is some close reflection. And this person had there's some real darkness there, a really good heart, but also there's some mental health stuff as well. And he at one point was like, oh, he blew the place up with his madness is the best way I can put it. And it really triggered my own shadow, which is what he was showing up. Here's your shadow, in dramatic form. And at one point I was stuck. I couldn't figure out. He wouldn't leave. He's like, it was COVID times too. You can't kick me out of here. I'll take your room. And it was like, his energy was similar to the child's mother, but now I'm living with it, and it's like, it was over Christmas. And right before I left to go visit my parents for the holidays, he had a big outbreak. And, it was really gnarly, crazy threats, threatening my life, like really weird, dark stuff. And I said to my partner, I was like, I'll never go back. I'll let this beautiful property that we've stewarded and put together in so much energy to create this, beacon of transformation and consciousness in Los Angeles hub, if you will. I got to let it go. I'll never sleep under the same roof with that soul again. It's not worth it. And I remember in the moment I had decided to let it go, a second thought popped in. Brandon, if you get the lesson that he brings, you don't need to figure out how to get rid of him. He'll get rid of himself. Once you get the lesson that he brings, the gift that he's bringing you. And then with my partner's help, she was like, Brandon, part of the issue with him is every time you interact with him, in person, he triggers your own, my own ability to get really hyped and over animated and agitated. And it's like, it turns into not a pretty scene. She's like, you were here on vacation over the next week or so, just interact only via text with him and don't ever lose your cool. Stay the same, stay the same, stay the same. And you added as a buffer to help me with that. Right. So I was like, you need to leave, texting, this isn't working anymore. You are not, you got to go. You can't get me out of here. I'll take your, all the threats and crazy talk. And I would just consistently say the same thing kindly. I'm sorry, you need to leave. This isn't working anymore. And after like a week or so of that, all of a sudden out of nowhere, oh, good news. I got this great opportunity in Las Vegas. I'm out of here. Woo, this is my idea, and off he went. And so I was stuck. And once I first surrendered and said, okay, I'm willing to just let it all go. I don't need it. It's obviously meant. And then right behind that came, as soon as I that energy was present, then it was like, hold on, what if you really pass the test he's offering you? Would it natural separation occur? And it did. And so I would say the thing you probably haven't tried is just accepting being stuck, loving yourself there. And as soon as you do that, all of a sudden, different energy has been introduced into the equation that hasn't been introduced before. And like Winston Churchill said, if you're going through hell, keep going. Because one thing that's guaranteed, one thing I can guarantee is change. So if you don't like something, guaranteed it's going to change in some way, shape, or form. And by the way, if you love something, guaranteed it's going to change. So you better bring your full presence and appreciation to it. And by taking this understanding, and that's we can't speak in absolutes about much, I don't believe, but we can when we say change is guaranteed. And so it's guaranteed to change in some way, shape, or form your life. So relaxing into that, and like the seventh key in the golden key, love what comes, or as Matt Kahn puts it, whatever rises, love that. If you can do that, try that formula on for size and see what it does for you.
Do you feel that people like your ex-wife and this guy has been a pattern of people in your life, and this guy finally finished the pattern?
You got it. I have a great add-on to that question, because yes, absolutely, these are close reflections. I feel I have a lot of love for both of them, right? I can feel with him, I feel like it's funny because I live in Los Angeles. We get very little weather. I mean, this year's been the rainiest I've ever seen it in 20 some years being there. But otherwise, it's, we're stuck in the best season all the time within 15 degrees, and the day he left the Mystic Manor, as we call it, the day he left the manor, within an hour of his leaving, his departure, I wasn't there, but people who were there, and I saw it on video camera, they were like, Brandon, it was like a tornado hit the house. It was like, I've lived there almost 4 years. I've never had anything blow off my balcony. All the things on my balcony got blown off, this big umbrella, and, and it looked like hail, and like, on the camera, it was like, I'm an hour down the road and it's sunny and fine. And it was like, I feel like energetically, I passed a test. I completed a boss's challenge that probably I had failed in many lifetimes with this person. And it cleared. It like creates a vacuum of new energy to come in. And it's like, tornado vibes. All of a sudden, the energy's clear. It's sunny again. Now I'll hear from him from time to time. And I have nothing but love for this person, and it is a great gift. Your challenges are blessings. And once you shift your lens to see that, and it's really hard when you're in it, of course, but it doesn't take me long to start saying, okay, why is this happening for me? What is this showing me about myself? How is this reflecting some part of me back to me that is for my good and growth? And once you put on that lens with your life, you're on the fast track.
What do you think is the best way to incorporate spirituality into your professional life?
Everything is who is it that said, I'm going blank on the guy's name. He said, walk as if your feet are kissing the ground. Right. And the idea, the energy of that, and I'm paraphrasing, is everything is sacred. Every moment. Once you realize this moment is as divine as any other moment ever has been, could be, or will be, and your job is to bring the awareness of that into it. Monday at the water cooler in the office after a long weekend, and like, where can I find the beauty here? And so, the person that rubs you wrong, and Rumi said, how will your mirror be polished if you're annoyed by every rub? And so these rubs are there to make you stronger and become more. So understanding the thing, you don't like your job, maybe there's certainly people listening who don't. It's there because there's an opportunity still there for you. When you've exhausted the opportunity, like I had a guest on my show, Derek Rydall, years ago. You can go search Rydall. I had him on a few times, and he shares this incredible stories of being an actor who's doing pretty well, to hitting hard times, to needing to go and become a waiter in Hollywood. And now he's waiting on his peers from before. They're coming in, and he's humiliated at first. And what have I fallen to? I'm this lowly waiter. And then he had the realization that, like, hold on. If I'm here for a reason, and I'm going to be the best darn waiter that's ever existed. And so he poured all his love and attention and energy and appreciation and the opportunity to not define his worth based off of this job that some part of his ego viewed not worthy, right? And he became the best waiter in the place. And he started doing so amazing that he started irritating other people there because he's making them look bad. And ultimately, they had asked him to leave because he was in a fit. It was like he was like, standing out in a way that would like disrupted things. And so he's like, in Brandon, I actually went from that to within a month, I'm on a private jet coaching people, and and it's like, what a gift, right? So there is no better place for you to get to the life of your dreams. No better starting point than where you are right now. You are perfectly positioned to lead exactly to the most grandiose, greatest and grandest version of yourself you've ever dreamed possible, based off of where you currently sit. And so once you understand, and that may not look like a beautiful, starting place with, unicorns and rainbows, and nor is it supposed to. And if you can bring your self-love, self-appreciation, focus BBB in the present of where you're at. The present is called the present because it's your gift. It is the gift. It is the most ideal and optimal thing to be happening for you in order for you to be led to the next greatest and greatest version of yourself. The source is perfect. It's never gotten it wrong. It's always happening for you in the most divine way possible.
Now, your book, The Golden Key, is free, right?
Yes, it is. Yes. If you go to goldenkey.gift, and you use the code LOVE, LOVE, at checkout, you can get the audio and or ebook as a gift, and it gives you the opportunity to create your own key code and share it with others if you feel inspired to do so. And the idea is, I call it the good kind of selfish. The more people I can help by spreading this information and these perspectives, the more comes back to me. Gandhi said, if you want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others. And I always add, that holds true because there are no others. So it's in giving that we receive. So anyone out there who doesn't know, what should I do? What's my path? Ultimately, I can tell you this hint: it'll involve service in some way, because it is in service that we all ultimately receive our fullest potential.
Where does one watch your late night talk show, Optimistic?
So over beginning in July 2019 up until COVID, March 2020, that's what I originally moved into the co-living event space I've referenced, the Mystic Manor. And the idea was to have a place big enough to do retreats for fans of Positive Head to come and spend a week on retreat. And then the last night they were there, we would film a new, whereas Positive Head has mostly been audio only. We've just started doing some video more recently, but mostly audio only podcast. I wanted to do something a little more grandiose, video production, that and not just Zoom necessarily, but actual live audience and interviewee. And I would do an opening monologue, and there'd be a visionary artist live painting behind me, and we'd talk to them about their piece. And then, main interview, then the retreat guest who had spent a week on retreat would come out and share about their experience over the week and ask questions of my main guest, and then a musical performance on the outro. So same sort of very similar format to a late night style show, all consciousness centric. We filmed 17 of those episodes from July 2019 to March 2020. We've only put out 4 because the COVID asteroid hit, and it kind of threw a wrench in a lot of doing retreats and filming in front of a live audience. All that went out the window. So I still have some that I'm planning to put out here in the coming months finally. But if you go for now to optimistic.tv, and optimistic is spelled like mystical, MYSTIC. So optimistic.tv, or on YouTube, you can find them if you search Optimistic as well, with Brandon Beachum. And you can see the first 4 episodes and more to come that are long overdue to be released.
I think that's a fascinating idea, to invite your audience to come live with you for a week.
Yeah.
How was that?
What a journey. Yeah, it was a lot. It was really a positive experience. We did 17 weeks of retreats. And I ended up, one of the reasons after COVID, I ended up not going back to that model. It's just a lot. I'm a person who's juggling a lot, and I'm going to write a book. I'm going to, I'm going to start industry again. I'm going to bring that back, as you'll see if you go to the industry website. And so, having people who came maybe from across the world to spend a week there, I would spend time with them, of course, but it was a lot energetically, and, they would rightfully so want a lot of attention and energy. And it was tough to juggle all the things that I want to do and was doing with, having that in my house. So, but what an experience to do it. And I'm so grateful for those that came, and who knows, maybe we'll do some iteration of it in the future where, but probably not all in the same house all the time.
All right. So you have the podcast, you've got the book, you've got the TV show where you can watch the episodes.
Yep.
What else do you got going on that you want us to know about?
The thing that I'm really excited about, I've mentioned, is in 2009, I did this social music sharing platform called Industry. The idea is that reinventing the music industry, spelled TREE. And I've been guided by spirit to, I started down the path, a lot of spiritual breadcrumbs, a very kind of trippy story that I share on one episode of Positive Head, share the whole origin story. It's led to launch this platform that allows fans to support artists in a more meaningful, interactive way, and to share revenues and from sales and things. And so at the time I launched it 2009, it was sort of like MySpace meets Spotify before Spotify. I had my own token or currency on it called Blooms before cryptocurrency that people would get paid out in. And then it was like I hit a wall, hit some personal tragedy, hit a wall with it. And that's when I went to the ex's couch and I was like, I need to manifest the money to do industry right. And that's when I was led to the idea for Resort Share. Resort Share became an Inc. fastest growing private company, 100 plus employees a few years later. And had such a tiger by the tail, I never went back to industry. And so I finally was like, well, you know what? Not meant. That was a different timeline. I was guided to do it. Maybe it is what it was supposed to be. It grew to a few thousand users and was kind of happening. And then I hit some walls. And that's when I was like, okay, I need to put this on ice and manifest the money to do it right without outside help. And that's when Resort Share came into the picture. And then fast forward to, just a couple of years ago, year and a half ago, probably, I'm talking to my ex-business partner from Resort Share, and he's like, man, you were just way ahead of yourself with industry. You should just bring it back using blockchain technology. It could really work even better now. And so doing what we do together, we got, talking about these ideas. And then I asked for some signs and got some very dramatic indicators from source, I would say, higher self, to bring it back. And so now industry version 2 is going to start in the really summer, September. We're mid-September 15th. We're going to release first song by an artist named Ruby Chase and Equanimous and Johnny June collaboration song called Down. And it's going to be fractionalized ownership of this song. Just for joining our community, you can own a portion of the song, or virtually own a portion of the song. And we're creating, a conscious art community. Industry 2 is going to be all about sharing music ownership rights and other art, ultimately to create permanent village infrastructure and events, and using a DAO and blockchain is for those who don't know, it's a decentralized autonomous organization. It's kind of like a corporation that lots of people get a say in. And so we're creating community around, with transformational festival culture being sort of the beating heart of it, and music and art is the thing that sort of is generative on the platform. And then we're going to see what we can do to raise consciousness on the planet by propagating more conscious art into the world and creating community around it. So that's in my headlights, and real excited about bringing that to the world. And like I said, if you go to the industry website, you can sign up to learn as things get released. And I have the podcast where I record the whole origin story, which is a trip.
Brandon, after watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions.
Sure.
Should they do that through your website or somewhere else?
Yeah, you can reach out through, positivehead.com. You can reach out. My email's brandon@positivehead.com. You can go to my Instagram, which is optimistic, kind of spelled like the show, MYSTIC. And then the O is a 0. So it's 0 PTIMYSTIC. You can reach me there. Smoke signals, telepathic communication, all are accepted.
Well, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
One last positive message. I'm going to reiterate something that I said earlier. I think it's very important that everyone gets. It will change everything if you can make this the core, tenet, the core aim, the core information of your biological operating system. And that is the ultimate truth that you are as valid, worthy of all the great things life has to offer as anyone ever has been, could be, or will be. Me, Jeff, your most, highest esteem held actor, musician, star, friend, whatever it is, business leader. They are all extensions of you. The greatness that makes them great is within you as well. And you have been just waiting for the right time. You can't know that what you are unless you know that what you are not, right? So if you've had a lot of challenge and the opposite of maybe, some of those people you hold in the highest esteem experience, congratulations, because without the contrast, none of it means anything, right? If you think about being with your most idealized lover, for example, it's very exciting to think about, like, the big actor or actress or whatever it is. And then now imagine having that, or your favorite food. Now have that forever, every day for eternity. It would become horrible. It would mean nothing, right? I asked my brother one time, what's the greatest meal he ever had? When he was in his early 20s, he didn't pay a ticket. And he went to jail for like 4 days because this outstanding ticket, which led to a warrant he wasn't aware of. Very sensitive, probably the most sensitive person I know. When he gets out of jail, I pick him up at 12:01. They let you stay 1 minute past midnight so they can charge for another day. Pick him up, bring him home. 1, 2 in the morning, I cook him a Hot Pocket. If you ask him to this day, what is the greatest meal he ever had? And he's had a lot of Michelin 5-star restaurants and great meals. He'll say that Hot Pocket because of the contrast of what he had just experienced, right? So if you have had a hard time, congratulations, because every moment is another chance to turn it all around. And you are as worthy as any other being ever has been, could be, or will be. And your bumps and bruises and ugly parts and all of that is what actually, you're perfectly imperfect. That's what makes you beautiful. And it gives you the opportunity to do better. And so that's what I'd like to leave everyone with, is really tapping into the truth of who and what you are and how incredibly worthy and loved you actually are.
Brandon, thank you for that message. And thank you for being my guest.
It's been such a pleasure. Thank you for having me, and all of you for tuning in. Until next time, journey well.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.